in that effort. I believe that the time for self-policing and self-regulation is over. Some of the big tech companies have said, trust us. That seems to be what Instagram is saying in your testimony. But self-policing depends on trust. The trust is gone. What we need now is independent researchers, objective overseers, not chosen by big tech, but from outside, and strong, vigorous enforcement of standards that stop the destructive, toxic content that now too often is driven at kids and takes them down rabbit holes to dark places. The day before this hearing, Instagram announced a set of proposals. These simple time management and parental oversight tools they could have been announced years ago. They weren't, and in fact, these changes fall way short of what we need, in my view. Many of them are still in testing, months away. The rollouts will be done at some point in the future. We don't know exactly when. And unfortunately, these announced changes leave parents and kids with no transparency into the black box algorithms, the 600-pound gorillas in those black boxes that drive that destructive and addictive content to children and teens. No effective warning or notice to parents when their children are spiraling into eating disorders, bullying, or self-harm. Nothing more than the bare minimum controls for parents, and of course, no real accountability to assure parents and kids that these safeguards will work. I'm troubled with the lack of answers on Instagram Kids. Once again, this pause looks more like a public relations tactic brought on by our hearings, just as these announced changes seem to be brought on by these proceedings announced just hours before your testimony. And we need real, serious review of those changes. The magnitude of these problems requires bold and broad solutions and accountability, which has been lacking so far. Facebook's own researchers have been warning management, including yourself, Mr. Moseri, for years about Instagram's harmful impacts on teens' mental health and well-being, and the whistleblower who sat exactly where you are told us about those documents, about the research, the studies, which showed that Facebook knew, it did the research, it had the studies, but it continued to profit from the destructive content because it meant more eyeballs, more advertising, more dollars. Given those warnings, it seems inexcusable that Facebook waited a decade to begin, and only to begin, figuring out that Instagram needed parental controls. In the past 2 months, this subcommittee has heard horrifying stories from countless parents whose lives and their children's lives have been changed forever. One father from Connecticut wrote to me about his daughter who developed severe anxiety in high school because of constant pressure from Instagram. That pressure became so intense, following her home from school, following her everywhere she went, following her into her bedroom in the evening, that she attempted suicide. Fortunately, her parents stepped in and sought help and found a recovery program, but the experience continues to haunt her and her family. Facebook's researchers call this fall into that kind of dark rabbit hole a perfect storm. That's the quote, perfect storm, created by its own algorithm that exacerbate downward spirals harmful to teens. Again, Facebook knows about the harm. It's done the research, the studies, the surveys repeatedly. It knows the destructive consequences of the algorithms and designs. It knows teens struggle with addiction and depression on Instagram. But that data has been hidden, like the algorithms themselves. Just yesterday, that Surgeon General's report provided powerful documentation on how social media can fan those flames and fuel the fires of the mental health crisis that we face among teens. And it signals that something is terribly wrong. What really stuns me is the lack of action. In fact, just within the last 2 months. 2 months ago, this subcommittee heard testimony from Facebook's global head of safety, Ms. Antigone Davis. At that time, I showed her the pro-eating disorder rampant on Instagram. I demonstrated through an experiment how its algorithms will flood a teen with triggering and toxic messages in just hours after we created an account. This was glorification of being dangerously underweight, tips on skipping meals, images we could not, in good conscience, show in this room. It's been 2 months, so we've repeated our experiment. On Monday, we created another fake account for a teenager and followed a few accounts promoting eating disorders, and again, within an hour, all of our recommendations promoted pro-anorexia and eating disorder content. 2 months ago, the global head of public safety for Facebook was put on notice by this subcommittee. Nothing has changed. It's all still happening. And in the meantime, more lives have been broken, real lives, with real families and futures, and you hear from them yourself. We all know that if Facebook saw a significant threat to its growth or ad revenue, it wouldn't wait 2 months to take action. So why does it take months for Facebook to act when our kids face danger, when time is not on our side? Time is not on our side. So no wonder parents are worried. In fact, parents are furious. They don't trust Instagram, Google, TikTok, and all of their big tech fears. And by the way, this is not an issue limited to Instagram or Facebook. Parents are asking, what is Congress doing to protect our kids? And the resounding bipartisan message from this committee is legislation is coming. We can't rely on trust anymore. We can't rely on self-policing. It's what parents and our children are demanding. Senator Blackburn and I are listening to them, as are other members of committee. We are working together. Your proposal for an industry body asks parents, yet again, to trust us. We'll do it ourselves, but self-regulation relies on that trust that has been squandered. We need to make sure that the responsibility is on big tech to put a safe product on the market. You can't be allowed to conceal when products are harming kids, so the first imperative is transparency. We need real transparency into these 800-pound gorilla black box algorithms and addictive designs. And disclosure has to include independent, qualified researchers who will then tell the story to the public. We need to update our children's privacy laws. Congress should pass the Bipartisan Children's and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act, authored by Senator Markey, who's here today. I'm proud to be working with him on updating and expanding it. Parents and children need more power and more effective tools to protect themselves on the platform. And that's why Senator Blackburn and I are working on a framework, and we've made good progress to enable that protection. There really should be a duty of care. The United Kingdom has imposed it. It's part of the law there. Why not here? That ought to be part of the framework of legislation that we're considering. Section 230 reform. You make a reference to it in your testimony. The days of absolute, broad, unique immunity for big tech are over. And finally, enforcement. State authorities, federal authorities, law enforcement has to be rigorous and strong. So I hope that we will begin the effort of working together, but one way or the other, this committee will move forward. And again, I thank you for being here. I thank all of my colleagues for attending, and I ask for remarks by the ranking member, Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal, and welcome to everyone. We are appreciative that you are here today, Mr. Moseri. We are grateful for your time and for your testimony. I do want to thank Senator Blumenthal and his team for the work. This is the 5th hearing that we have held dealing with the issues around big tech and the invasions of privacy, the lack of data security, the need for Section 230 reforms, and looking very directly at what these platforms, social media platforms, the effect, the negative and adverse effect that they are having on our children. I will tell you that today I am just a little bit frustrated. I'm frustrated because this is now the 4th time in the past 2 years that we have spoken with someone from Meta, as you are now calling yourselves, and I feel like the conversation continues to repeat itself ad nauseum. And when I go back home to Tennessee, I know that the people there, lots of moms and dads and teachers and pediatricians, they share this frustration because they continue to hear from you that change is coming, that things are going to be different, that there are going to be more tools in the toolbox, that kids are going to be safer online, that privacy is going to be protected, and that data is going to be secure. But guess what? Nothing changes. Nothing. The chairman just talked about what happened with Ms. Davis when she came in and how we pointed all of this out specifically of what we had found. And yet yesterday, what happened? The exact same thing. So I hope that you appreciate the frustration that the American public feels, that they appreciate what the internet can do for them in bringing the world closer. But the applications that you are pushing forward, the social media, the addictive nature, the way this affects children, there is such a frustration that you turn a blind eye toward taking responsibility and accepting accountability for your platform, how you are structured, and how you use the data on these children. Yesterday at 3 a.m., which is midnight in the Silicon Valley, you released a list of product updates that you said would raise the standard for protecting teens and supporting parents online. And I'm not sure what hours you all keep in California, but where I'm from, the middle of the night is when you drop news that you don't want people to see. And maybe you thought that doing it in this manner would keep members of this subcommittee from seeing it right away and from raising concerns. Because while I'm sure you know that we fully share the goal of protecting kids and teens online, what we aren't sure about is how the half measures you've introduced are going to get us to the point where we need to be to truly protect teens and young adults online. For example, we know that social media is an integral part of teens' daily lives. According to the Mayo Clinic, 97% of teens between ages 13 and 17 use a social media platform. And 45% say they are online almost constantly. So while telling teens to take a break might seem helpful on the face of things, it's probably not going to get most teenagers to stop doing what they're doing and take a break. Educational tools for parents can be helpful, but frankly, I'm more concerned about the things we know kids and teens are hiding from their parents. We know that Facebook and Instagram have encouraged teens to use secondary accounts and told them to be authentic. And we all remember what it was like to be a teenager. So while parents might gain some insight into what their teens do on their main accounts, what do they do about the accounts they don't even know exist? The ones that Instagram is encouraging them to create. And Instagram announced in July that it would default all teens onto private accounts when they sign up for the site. Yet just yesterday, my team created an account as a 15-year-old girl, and it defaulted to public. So, while Instagram is touting all these safety measures, they aren't even making sure that these safety measures are in effect. For me, this is a case of too little too late, because now there is bipartisan momentum both here and in the House to tackle these problems we are seeing with big tech. As Senator Blumenthal said, we are working on children's privacy, online privacy, data security, and Section 230 reforms. This is the appropriate time to pass a national consumer privacy bill, as well as kid-specific legislation to keep minors safe online. We also need to give serious thought to how companies like Facebook and Instagram continue to hide behind Section 230's liability shield when it comes to content like human trafficking, sex trafficking, drug trafficking. Despite Congress speaking clearly to this issue when we passed FOSTA and SESTA a few years ago, Mr. Moseri, there is a lot of work for us to do to improve the online experience and to protect our children and our grandchildren. I think it's best if we do this together, and I look forward to hearing your ideas and your testimony today. Thank you for your appearance.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. I'm pleased to introduce Adam Moseri. He spent over 11 years at Meta and oversees all functions of the Instagram app, including engineering, product management, and operations. Mr. Moseri, the floor is yours.
Right. Apologies. Oh, my apologies. Thank you, Senator. Chairman Blumenthal, Ranking Member Blackburn, members of the subcommittee. I'm Adam Moseri, and I've served as the head of Instagram since 2018. And over the last few months, the subcommittee has held a number of hearings on the safety and well-being of young people online. This is a critically important topic, as you said in your opening statement, and it's something that we think about and work on every day at Instagram. The internet has changed how we all communicate. It's changed how we express ourselves. It's changed how we stay connected to the people that we care about. It's also changed what it's like to be a teenager. Teenagers have always spent time with their friends, developed new interests, and explored their identities. Today, they're doing those things on platforms like Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Snapchat. I firmly believe that Instagram and that the internet more broadly can be a positive force in young people's lives. I'm inspired every day by teens on Instagram, and I'm proud that our platform is a place where they can spend time with the people that they care about, where they can start incredible movements, where they can find new interests, where they can even turn a passion into a business. I also know that sometimes young people can come to Instagram dealing with difficult things in their lives. I believe that Instagram can help in those critical moments. It's one of the things that our research has shown, and to me, this is the most important work that we can do. Taking on complex issues like bullying and social comparison and making changes. Now, I recognize that many in this room have deep reservations about our company. but I want to assure you that we do have the same goal. We all want teens to be safe online. The internet isn't going away, and I believe there's important work that we can do together, industry and policymakers, to raise the standards across the internet to better serve and protect young people. But the reality is that keeping people safe is not just about any one company. An external survey just last month suggested that more teens are using TikTok and YouTube than Instagram. This is an industry-wide challenge and requires industry-wide solutions and industry-wide standards. Now, we have a specific proposal. We believe there should be an industry body that will determine the best practices when it comes to what I think are the three most important questions with regards to youth safety: how to verify age, how to build age-appropriate experiences, and how to build parental controls. The body should receive input from civil society, from parents, and from regulators. The standards need to be high, and the protections universal. And I believe that companies like ours should have to earn some of their Section 230 protections by adhering to those standards. Now, we've been calling for regulation for nearly 3 years now, and from where I sit, there's no area more important than youth safety. That said, I understand that developing policy takes time, so we're going to continue to push forward on the safety and well-being of young people online. On age verification, we're developing new technologies to address this industry-wide challenge. We're creating a menu of options to allow people to verify that they're old enough to use Instagram, that extend beyond simply relying on an ID card. And we're building new technology to proactively find and remove accounts belonging to those under the age of 13. We're also using technology to understand if people are above or below the age of 18 so that we can create a more age-appropriate version of Instagram for them. For example, adults can no longer message people under the age of 18 that don't follow them. And as of this week, we announced that people can no longer tag or mention teens that don't follow them as well. We also provide tools for parents. Parents and guardians know what's best for their teens. And we're launching Instagram's first set of parental controls in March of next year, allowing them to see how much time their teens spend on Instagram and to set time limits. We'll also give teens a new option to notify their parents if they report someone, giving their parents an opportunity to talk about it with them. As a father of 3, I care a great deal about creating an online world that is safe for my children and that allows them to benefit from all the amazing things the internet has to offer. As the head of Instagram, I recognize the gravity of my role in making this happen, not only for my kids, but for generations to come. I'm hopeful that we can work together to reach that goal. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Moseri. I'll take the first round of questions. Again, we're going to do 5-minute rounds. Just a short while ago, at our last hearing, TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube sat at that table, and they all committed to making internal research algorithms and data sets about their effect on children and teens available to independent researchers. Will you commit to doing the same?
Senator, we believe it's important to be transparent both about ranking and algorithms and about data for research. I can commit to you today that we will provide meaningful access to data so that third-party researchers can design their own studies and make their own conclusions about the effects of well-being on young people. And on ranking, I can commit to do all I can to explain how ranking works and to find other ways for us to be transparent about algorithms.
Will you support a legal requirement that independent overseers and researchers not only have access to the data sets, but also check the way algorithms are driving content and recommend changes that you will adopt?
Senator, I'd be happy to have my office work with you on that. I believe that direction is an important one. We do a number of things in this area already. We provide information every month on the effects of our algorithms on removing problematic content from our systems.
Will you commit to a legal requirement that the access be provided and that an independent, separately appointed and separately funded body, not an industry body, as you've suggested, but an independent overseer and researcher have that access?
Senator, On the specifics of how the body works, I'm not a legal expert, but yes, I think there should be requirements and standards for how companies like ours are transparent about both data and algorithms.
Because an industry body is not government regulation that Mark Zuckerberg or others at Facebook and elsewhere have called for. An industry body setting standards is not the same as an independent one. Let me ask you, shouldn't children and parents have the right to report dangerous material and abuse and get a response, get some action? Because we've heard harrowing stories from parents who tried to report and have heard no response. My office made a report and got no response until CNN made the report to press relations. Shouldn't there be an obligation that Instagram will respond?
Senator, yes, I believe we try and respond to all reports, and if we ever fail to do so, that is a mistake that we should correct.
Instagram is addictive. That's the view that has been repeated again and again and again by people who are expert in this field. Parents know it, and for teens who see Instagram's algorithms encouraging, for example, eating disorders, they find it almost impossible to stop. The UK code restricts Instagram's use of addictive design, legally restricts its use of addictive designs. Shouldn't we have a similar rule in the United States?
Senator, respectfully, I don't believe the research suggests that our products are addictive. Research actually shows that on 11 of 12 difficult issues that teens face, teens are struggling, said Instagram helps more than harms. Now, we always care about how people feel about their experiences on our platform, and it's my responsibility as the head of Instagram to do everything I can to help keep people safe, and we're going to continue to do so.
We can debate the meaning of the word addictive, but the fact is that teens who go to the platform find it difficult, maybe sometimes impossible, to stop. And part of the reason is that more content is driven to them to keep them on the site, to aggravate the emotions that are so seductive and ultimately addictive. The UK recognizes it by imposing that design restriction. The same ought to be done in the United States. Let me ask you, will you commit to make the pause on Instagram Kids permanent? In other words, stop developing a site for an app for children under 13.
Senator, the idea of building a version of Instagram for 10 to 12-year-olds was trying to solve a problem. The idea being that we know that 10 to 12-year-olds are online, they want to use platforms like Instagram, and it's difficult for companies like ours to verify age for those that are so young they don't yet have an ID. The hope was to always, or the plan was to always make sure that no child between 10 and 12 had access to any version of Instagram, even one that was designed for them, without their parents' consent. And so what I can commit to today is that no child between the ages of 10 and 12, should we ever manage to build Instagram for 10 to 12-year-olds, will have access to that without their explicit parental consent.
I have more questions. My time has expired. I thank you for answering my questions, Ms. Moseri. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Staying on Instagram Kids for a moment, I know you were doing research into 8-year-olds and pulling together data on 8-year-olds, and I assume that was in relation to Instagram Kids. So are you still doing research on children under age 13?
Sorry, making sure the mic is on. Senator, I don't believe we ever did any research with 8-year-olds for Instagram Kids, and no, neither are we doing that today. We've entirely paused the project.
Okay. And then if you were to completely remove that project, who would make that decision?
Senator, it was my decision to pause Instagram Kids.
Okay, and so it would be your decision to just do away with it?
Senator, I'm responsible for Instagram,
okay.
So yes, it would be my decision.
Okay, let's talk about Jane Doe versus Facebook.
Sorry, Senator, what?
Jane Doe versus Facebook.
Apologies.
Okay, I assume you can't get into the details of that because the Supreme Court is still deciding whether or not to take that case. But the petition, which alleges that Facebook enabled the trafficking of a minor on its platform, really raises some very serious questions and concerns about what we're seeing and how people are using Instagram. So, do you prohibit known sex offenders from creating Instagram accounts?
Senator, human trafficking and any exploitation of children is abhorrent, and we don't allow it on our platforms.
Okay, do you require minors to link their accounts to a parent or guardian's account?
Senator, no.
You don't?
If you're over the age of 13, you can sign up for an Instagram account. But we do believe that parental controls are incredibly important, which is why we're launching our first version in March of next year.
Okay. Yes, the controls are going to be vitally important, but an industry group is not going to give the controls that are needed, and probably not even an independent group. That is why we'll do something with federal statute. Also, I think it would be interesting to know how many people that are in human trafficking, sex trafficking, and drug trafficking that have been indicted or convicted that were using Instagram. Could you all provide that number for us?
Senator, I'd be happy to talk to the team and get back to you.
That would be excellent. My staff created an Instagram account for a 15-year-old girl, and it defaulted to public. I mentioned that earlier. Isn't the opposite supposed to happen, and have you considered turning off the public option altogether for minor accounts?
Senator, I appreciate the question. I learned of that just this morning. It turns out that though we default those under the age of 16 to private accounts for the vast majority of accounts which are created on Android and iOS, we have missed that on the web, and we will correct that quickly.
Okay. Also, when they created this account, it defaulted to this statement: include your account when recommending similar accounts people might want to follow. Is this a feature that should remain on by default for minors?
Senator, we think it's important that no matter what your age, it's easy for you to find accounts that you're interested in.
Even if you're under 18?
Senator, I believe teenagers, too, have interests, and that should be easy for them to find those interests.
Teenagers have interest, yes. But what we're trying to address are the adverse and negative effects that are happening to children because they are on your platform. Can adults not labeled as suspicious by you still find, follow, and message minors?
Senator, if your account is private, if someone follows you, you have to approve it. So adults can ask to follow you, but you have the decision or the ability to decide whether or not they're allowed to.
Okay. In your testimony, you said you removed more than 850,000 accounts because they did not meet your minimum age requirement. These accounts were disabled because the users did not provide identification showing that they were at least 13 years old. So why did you say you didn't want to know when JoJo Siwa said she had been on Instagram since she was 8 years old? Is that your general attitude toward kids who are on your platform?
Absolutely not, Senator. We invest a lot to try to identify those under the age of 13, and whenever we find them, we remove.
At that moment, when you responded to her that you did not want to know, why didn't you use that as a teaching moment?
Senator, I would say it was a missed opportunity.
Indeed, it was a missed opportunity, and it sends the wrong message. It looked as if you were encouraging kids that want to be online stars to get on earlier and to build their audience. This is a part of our frustration with you, with Instagram, and with these platforms. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. Mr. Moseri, I'm looking at this from a perspective of parents, and I guess I'll talk to parents, since so many of them have told me that they have done everything they can to try to get their kids off your product, kids who are addicted at age 10. And they are scared for their kids. They want their kids to do their homework and not get addicted to Instagram. And yet we then find out that what your company did was to increase your marketing budget to try to woo more teens, from $67 million in 2018 to $390 million focused on kids this year. And so when I hear you're going to suddenly, with all your technological wizards, develop some kind of new way to check to see if really young kids are on there, you could have been spending this money, $390 million, to do that for years. You have the money to do it. I think that we are in diametrically opposed goals, the goals of parents out there and the goals of your company. Our kids aren't cash cows. And that is exactly what's been going on. Because when you look at the marketing budget and you look at what your company has done, it's to try to get more and more of them on board. And when I look at your company's quotes from one document, you, not you personally, but your company viewed losing teen users as a, quote, existential threat, whereas parents are viewing their kids' addictions to your product and other products as an existential threat to their families. So my first question is that in fact the truth that you've been increasing money, advertising money, to woo more teen kids onto your platform?
Senator, no, I don't believe those statistics are correct. We increased our overall marketing budget between last year and this year, but it was not, I think you characterized it as the majority of it was focused on teens, and that's not true.
Okay, so do you view the kids as a feeder way for people to get into your product? Have you not done things to get more teenagers interested in your product? Are you not worried about losing them to other platforms? You better tell the truth. You're under oath.
Absolutely, Senator. Senator, we try and make Instagram as relevant as possible for people of all ages, including teens. Teens do amazing things on Instagram every day, but we also invest, I believe, more than anyone else in keeping people, including teens, safe. We will spend around $5 billion this year alone, and we have over 40,000 people working on safety and integrity at the company.
And do you think 3 hours a day is an appropriate amount of time for kids to spend on Instagram?
Senator,
I'm asking this because just when you put out those new rules, that was an option for parents. 3 hours a day. Is that a good use of kids' time?
Senator, I appreciate the question.
And it was in your safety tools that you just put out there. The first option given to kids, to parents, was 3 hours a day.
Senator,
I have them. Can I put them on the record?
Sorry,
Mr. Chair, thank you.
If I may, Senator, I'm a parent, and I can understand that parents have concerns about how much screen time their kids have. I think every parent feels that way. I ultimately think that a parent knows best what's best for their teen, so the appropriate amount of time should be a decision by a parent about the specific teen. If one parent wants to set that limit at 10 minutes and another parent wants to set that limit at 3 hours, who am I to say that they don't know what's best for their children?
And do you believe your company has invested enough in identifying that young children are not on the platform when you know that they're not supposed to be on there, and making sure you're registering and using all your technology not to just increase your profits, but to make sure the kids aren't on there? Do you think you've done enough?
Senator, two things. One, yes, I believe that we've invested more than anyone else, but I also believe that it's still a very challenging industry-wide issue. I think there's a number of things that we can do at the industry level to better verify age. Specifically, I believe it would be much more effective to have age verification at the device level, have a parent who gives their 14-year-old a device, tell the phone that their child is 14, as opposed to having every app, and there's millions of apps out there, trying to verify age on their own. That should happen at the device level. We understand that might not happen, or that might take time, and in the meantime, we're going to invest heavily in getting more sophisticated in how we identify the age of people under the age of 18.
And is it true that someone in your company said that it was an existential threat if you lost teen users?
Senator, I don't...
Is that true or not? Because we have a document that said that.
Senator, I assume that's true.
Okay. So you understand what we're thinking up here when it's our job to protect kids, and we have parent after parent calling our office, emailing us. One of the parents likened to me that it was like a water faucet. going off, and it was overflowing, and she's sitting there with a mop trying to figure out how to use all of the tools you give them that she can't figure out how to use. So I think at some point the accountability is on you guys. And that means everything from the privacy bills to expanding the child protections online to the competition policy. Because maybe if we had actual competition in this country, instead of Meta owning you and owning most of the platforms and most of the back and forth for kids, maybe we could have another platform developed that would have the privacy protections that you have not been able to develop in terms of keeping teens off your platform that aren't even old enough to be on there. So that's what I think, some food for thought for all of you, is the opposition to some of the competition policy, capitalism, pro-capitalism ideas that we have over in judiciary. And I'll hand it back to our chair.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. Thanks for your work, your leadership on this issue here and on the Judiciary Committee, where we're on the subcommittee on antitrust, which you chair. I will ask a couple of questions because we have a vote ongoing, so a number of my colleagues will be returning from the floor. Your suggestion for tech companies to earn Section 230 protection has a certain appeal to me, since I'm the author of the Earn It Act, along with Senator Graham. It's also the concept that underlies other proposals that we've made, but that's not government regulation. So the question is, will you support the UK's children's code that Instagram has to obey in the UK? Shouldn't kids in the United States have protection as good as the kids in UK enjoy?
Absolutely, Senator. A few quick things. One is, I believe that is the age-appropriate design. I'm forgetting the last letter of the acronym. And I believe it's something that we support, and we support safety standards for kids everywhere, including here in the U.S. I'd also, if you would indulge me for a minute, like to clarify that my proposal is, yes, an industry body that sets standards for youth safety with input from civil society, from policymakers, and from parents, but one that once those standards are proposed, they would be approved by policymakers like yourself. And I also believe that policymakers or regulators should make the decision of whether or not any individual company, like mine, is adhering to those standards. So it's not simply self-regulation.
And then enforce them? Bring lawsuits? Seek damages?
Senator, we believe that a strong incentive would be to tie some of the Section 230 protections to adherence, and that could be a decision by regulators.
So would the Attorney General of the United States or the Attorney General of a state, like Connecticut, where I was Attorney General, have the power to enforce those standards?
Senator, we believe in enforcement. Specifically, how to implement that enforcement is something that we would like to work with your office on and other offices as well.
Well, that's a simple yes or no. Enforceability has to be part of your proposal.
Senator, I agree. Enforceability is incredibly important. Without enforcement, it's just words.
So you think that the Attorney General of the United States could enforce those standards, which means they would be written in the statute?
Senator, I don't know, because I'm not a legal expert, if the best way to enforce it would be with the Attorney General. But in general, I think it should happen at the federal level, and it's something that I'd be happy to have my team work with you.
Would you favor private rights of action, so individuals who are harmed could bring an action against Meta?
Senator, I believe that it's important that companies like ours are held accountable to high standards, but I believe the most important way or the most effective way of doing so is to define industry standards and best practices at the federal level, ideally, and to seek enforcement as you suggest.
These are really yes or no questions. They're pretty clear, and I know you are knowledgeable about them. So I hope you will answer them more clearly in the answers that you provide in writing. I'm going to yield to Senator
And I can do this on the record, but I did want to, since you denied this idea that the marketing budget went from $67 million to $390 million, and that much of the budget was allocated to wooing teens. That was reported on by the New York Times from internal documents from your company. So do you still deny that this is the fact?
Senator, occasionally there are reports that are inaccurate. In this case, I believe that report or that article said that the majority of our budget was focused on teens, and I know for a fact that that was not the case.
Much of the budget. Is that accurate?
Senator, I don't remember off the top of my head.
Then could you give me the number of what percentage of the budget was focused on teens? You must, as a business, be able to break it down that way. So that would be helpful. I'll
Senator,
ask that in writing.
I'd be happy to follow up with you on
Okay.
that.
Thank you.
Senator Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to your leadership, Mr. Chairman, we have Frances Haugen, who has told us quite clearly that 32% of teen girls say that when they feel bad about their bodies, Instagram makes them feel worse. And 6% of American teen users trace their desire to kill themselves to Instagram. That's your own research, Mr. Moseri. Yet, faced with these frightening findings, did Facebook back off its efforts to target children? No, just the opposite. Facebook pursued plans to launch a version of the platform for even younger users, Instagram Kids, and that is appalling. Mr. Moseri, I'm glad Facebook has heeded my calls and paused these plans, but you have since publicly doubled down on Instagram Kids and said it is, quote, the right thing to do. Your statement makes crystal clear that self-regulation is not an option for parents and children in the United States of America. Instagram sees a $sign when it sees kids. Parents should see a stop sign when it sees Instagram. Mr. Moseri, do you support my bipartisan legislation with Senator Blumenthal, Senator Cassidy, Senator Lummis to update the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act and give 13, 14, and 15-year-olds control over their data? Yes or no?
Senator, respectfully, it's important that we're clear on what the research actually shows. Any loss of life to suicide or to anything else, any other reason is a tragedy, but that was 6% number is inaccurate. It was 1% of teens would trace their thoughts back. Now, anybody feeling worse about themselves is something that we take incredibly seriously. Now, you asked if I support the specific act that you're proposing. I do strongly support federal regulation, not industry regulation, when it comes to youth safety. That said, if you move the age from 13 to 16, we know that 14 and 15-year-olds also want to be online. They also can lie about their age, and you're going to make the challenge of age verification even more difficult. That said, I do believe that 13 isn't a magic number. People's needs as they grow up evolve, and we should build age-appropriate experiences based on children's age.
So will you give 13 to 15-year-olds the right to have all of their information expunged?
Senator,
It's being gathered online. Do you support legislation that would give parents and children the ability to have their records expunged?
Senator, you can already delete your account and all of your data. You should have that right, whether or not you're a teenager or an adult.
Would you support national legislation that mandates that each parent and child be given the ability to expunge it?
Senator,
Would you support legislation to do that, make it mandatory?
Senator, I would support legislation that required companies like ours to allow people to delete their data, yes.
Yeah, okay. And just to make that a permanent protection that's on the books. Would you support legislation to ban targeted ads towards children,
Senator,
towards teens and children?
Senator, we believe that anyone should always have an age-appropriate experience on Instagram or on any social platform, and that extends to ads. We have different rules for ads on Instagram and on Facebook. We only allow advertisers to target based on age, based on gender, and based on location. And we don't allow certain types of ads, things like weight loss ads and dating ads for those under the age of 18, or alcohol-related ads for those under the age of 21.
So do you support legislation that would ban targeting of ads to children? Yes or no?
Senator, I believe it's valuable for ads to be relevant, but I do believe that some measures need to be taken to keep children safe, which is why I would support something in the direction of what we do, which is to limit the targeting abilities of platforms.
Yeah, well, again, yes and no. Mandated, no mandate. That's the question. It's exactly why we have to make sure that Facebook and Instagram don't reserve the right to be able to target these kids. Yes or no?
Senator, I'm trying to be specific about what I would support, which is what we build, which is limited targeting options.
All right, again, I just keep coming back to the fact that your answers are too vague to make it possible for us to make these decisions in an informed legislative way, and to do so in the very near future, which is what I think we have to do. The chilling truth, unfortunately, continues just to be that in the absence of regulation, that big tech has become a threat to our democracy, our society, and to the children in our country. And let's just be clear, Facebook, which owns Instagram, opposes regulation. Your idea of regulation is an industry group creating standards that your company follows. That's self-regulation. That's status quo. And that just won't cut it post the revelations that this subcommittee has made public. We do need laws. We need laws passed by this body. We have to ban targeted ads. We have to make sure that that is the law in our country. And everything that this subcommittee has unveiled continues to make that a necessity, including the testimony that you are delivering today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Marquis. Senator Baldwin.
So sorry I missed just a segment as I went over to vote, and it may have come up because this is work I did with Senator Klobuchar, but I joined Senators Klobuchar and Capito in writing to Meta for more information about how Instagram is combating eating disorder content and the harms it brings to users, particularly young people. In response to our question about how the platform is working to remove this content, Meta indicated that it uses a combination, I'm quoting now from the letter, a combination of reports from our community, human review, and artificial intelligence, close quote, to find and take down material that violates your terms of service. The response further notes that there are more than 15,000 human reviewers on staff. I also met with Frances Haugen, the former Facebook employee whose disclosures has spurred this series of hearings. And when I asked her about what more Instagram could do to remove content like this, content glorifying eating disorders, she argued that more human review is really the key. According to her, many community reports simply are not investigated, and artificial intelligence cannot successfully identify patterns, networks, and distribution points for problematic content. Given that Meta's platforms, according to your own data, have 3.6 billion monthly active users, the 15,000 reviewers would seem to pale in comparison to the amount of content those 3.6 billion monthly active users could post. So do you agree that more human reviewers will help you move more successfully at removing problematic content more quickly? And if so, will your company commit to strengthening its investment in human review?
Senator, thank you for the question. We have over 40,000 people, human reviewers and otherwise, and engineers who work on safety and integrity. And we're investing about $5 billion this year. At a high level, people are better at nuance, and technology is often better at scale. I think the most effective thing we can do, not only for eating disorder content, which is tragic and a complicated societal issue, is to invest more, particularly on the technology side, but in both. We're going to continue to do so.
Let me ask, I know that this hearing is focused mostly on youth and harmful, but in how many countries is Instagram available?
Senator, Instagram is available in over 70 languages. I unfortunately don't know the number of countries off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get back to you with that number.
Okay, so 70 languages, that's the point I was going to get to. Of those 40,000 or 15,000, which is what was in the letter response, how many are language-specific, sort of monitoring content in each of those 70 languages?
Thank you, Senator. Actually, I misspoke. We review content in 70 languages. We have even more languages that people speak that use Instagram, and we're always looking to increase the number that we cover. I apologize for the mistake.
Okay, so there are gaps then in terms of human review in those areas.
Senator, we're always looking to improve, not only through language coverage, but through building more accurate classifiers, through improving the efficiency of our reviewers, because it helps keep people more safe.
I may have some follow-ups with regard to that are more specific, but we also all know that there is tremendous social pressure for kids to utilize social media platforms and services. And while it is the industry standard to block or restrict access to those younger than 13, we know that younger teens and tweens are still signing up for social media accounts. I appreciate that your company decided to press pause on its proposed service focused on younger kids earlier this year. I understand from your announcement yesterday that Meta is looking to introduce new parent controls and other tools for Instagram in the coming months. But I'm concerned about what you are doing today to keep kids under 13 off the platform. So tell me a little bit more about what you're doing to strengthen age verification and why, given the problems of which you're already well aware with Instagram and Meta's experience with other services focused on younger kids like Messenger Kids, why have you waited to institute more parental controls or other steps protecting young users?
Senator, on the parental controls question, I believe as a parent, it's going to be more responsible to develop an age-appropriate version of Instagram for those under 13. But I paused that project, and I took the exact work they were building, which was parental controls, because no one was going to have access unless they had their parents' consent. And we pivoted that to teens because 13 isn't a magical number. Now, you also asked, how do we verify the age of those under 13? It's difficult, given that young people of that age don't have an ID in most countries. We build what we call classifiers, which try to predict age, and then we ask people to prove their age if it looks like they might be too young. We look at things like, in certain countries, sweet 16 is a cultural norm here in the U.S. And so we look for, do people say that on someone's birthday, and does that line up with the age that they said? And we get better over time as we get more signals, but I want to be very clear, it's not perfect, which is why I believe there are better industry-wide ways to solve age verification, because it really is an industry challenge. It is not unique to Facebook or to Instagram.
Thank you. Chairman Blumenthal will be back from his vote in a moment, and we're going to be starting our second round. We have some other members that are coming for their first round. In the meantime, I want to return to a question I asked you about those that are human traffickers, sex traffickers, drug traffickers, their utilization of your site. Now, I know that in 2020, you sent over 21 million sex abuse images on your platform. Facebook sent these. And you sent these to NCMEC. So I thank you for doing that. That's the right thing to do. I'm interested to know whether these child exploitation images and reports, if in your reports, do you include traffickers? And do you include those violations when you make that report to NCMEC with these images?
Senator, I'd have to check on that specific and get back to you, but we do allow you to report an image or a photo for violating any of our standards, and you can see how well we are at reducing the prevalence of those problems in our consumer.
Then get back to us and let us know if you are also reporting these individuals that are posting and sharing these sexual abuse images of children. Senator Zoom,
Absolutely,
you're
Senator.
recognized for 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for holding today's hearing. The lack of transparency from big tech companies and the effect these companies have on consumers is concerning to the public, and rightfully so. Because of the secrecy with which big tech protects their algorithms and content moderation practices, we have little idea how these companies use algorithms to amplify or suppress content, or how they can affect the behavior of users without their knowledge. Tomorrow, the Communications Subcommittee, on which I serve as ranking member, will take a closer look at the effects of this persuasive technology, and I look forward to hearing from the panel about the details of how algorithms and artificial intelligence are designed and deployed on internet platforms to manipulate users, as well as the bigger picture about what the future might hold for us when corporations and governments know more information about each of us than we know about ourselves. We must find ways to improve more transparency and accountability into the algorithms deployed on internet platforms that select the content that billions of people see every day. Since hearing from the Facebook whistleblower, we now have more insight into Instagram and Facebook's troubling practices with regard to how it uses algorithms, and in my view, it's long past time for Congress to enact legislation to ensure that these companies are held accountable. There's also bipartisan support for shedding more light on the secretive content moderation processes big tech uses, I should say, and to provide consumers more options when engaging with internet platforms, which is why I've introduced 2 bipartisan bills to address these issues, the PACT Act and the Filter Bubble Transparency Act. And I look forward in the time that I have to discussing these issues with you today, Mr. Moseri. And let me start by just asking, does Instagram use persuasive technology, meaning technology that is designed to change people's attitudes and behaviors?
Senator, I've worked on ranking and algorithms for years, and that's not how we work. We use ranking to try and connect people with the friends that they find meaningful, and we use them to try and keep people safe.
The Wall Street Journal revealed that Instagram often ignored warnings about the harmful impact the platform had on users, particularly young girls. With that being said, do you believe consumers should be able to use Instagram without being manipulated by algorithms that are designed to keep them hooked on the platform? And would you support giving consumers more options when engaging on Instagram's platform? For instance, providing consumers a feed that's not being fed to them by algorithms or that is in a chronological order.
Senator, I believe it's important that people have control of their experience, so yes, I would support giving people the option to have a chronological feed.
On the issue of Section 230 reform, Senator Schatz and I have introduced legislation that would, among other things, require platforms like Instagram to provide for more due process to users regarding their moderation and censorship practices, and submit public transparency reports about content that has been removed or de-emphasized. Do you believe this provision would help build trust with Instagram's users?
Senator, we believe in more transparency and accountability, and we believe in more control. That's why we're currently working on a version of a chronological feed that we hope to launch next year. That's why we provide a number of ways for you to see how content moderation works on the platform. So for instance, today you can go to the Account Center, I believe it's called Account Status, and see any of your content that has been taken down. And that's why we're working on more ways to give people more control over their experience and create more transparency about how Instagram works.
Do you believe that algorithm explanation or algorithm transparency are appropriate policy responses?
I believe very strongly in algorithmic transparency. I think it'd be hard for you to find someone who's tried as much to explain how ranking works. There's a number of ways to be transparent. I think in some cases, the most effective is to look at the output of algorithms, like we do in our community guidelines enforcement report. And in other cases, it's more appropriate to explain how they work instead of releasing millions of lines of code. Apologies.
And could you just elaborate a little bit on, when you talk about giving consumers a feed that's not being fed to them by an algorithm or that is in a chronological order? You said that you're going to implement that policy beginning next year. How do you came to that decision, and sort of more specifically what the dates for that implementation, and maybe if you could elaborate a little bit on just exactly what that might look like.
Absolutely, Senator. So we've been focused for a few years now on how to give people more control over their experience. One idea that we've experimented with publicly is called favorites, where you can pick a subset of people you want to have show up at the top of feed. Another we've been working on for months now is a chronological version of Instagram. I wish I had a specific month to tell you right now, but right now we're targeting the first quarter of next year.
Okay. And we would like to take what you're proposing to do and codify it, and that's what the Filter Bubble Act does. Thank you, Madam.
Senator Lujan, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chair Blackburn, and want to thank everyone for calling this important hearing as well, to our chair and to our ranking member. Tomorrow I'll also be convening a hearing titled Disrupting Dangerous Algorithms, addressing the harms of persuasive technology in the Communications, Media, and Broadband Subcommittee, where we'll discuss legislative solutions to online amplification of content that spreads misinformation, threatens the mental and physical well-being of our children, and promotes extremism. One of the lines of questions that I had today, based on questions that came before from other colleagues earlier in this important hearing, lies around data retention and deletion. And I think there was a line of questioning even now from one of my colleagues as well. Does Instagram have in place practices to abide by the principle of data minimization, especially for sensitive personal information?
Yes, Senator.
Can you provide those to the committee?
Senator, I'd be happy to follow up with that.
That's a yes?
Senator, yes, I'll get the exact details on what we do and follow up with the committee.
Appreciate that. How long does Instagram store data related to what websites users visit and what internal links they click from inside the app?
Senator, I apologize. I do not know that offhand, but again, I'd be happy to get back to you with the specifics there.
Do you know how long Instagram stores location information for a user?
Senator, if you post a photo that has a location, it'll say that location on that photo, so that'll be stored for as long as that photo is up. In other cases, I assume we have retention policies that are quite short. We'll get back to you with the specifics, but it'll depend on the usage of location data.
When was the last time Instagram reviewed and updated its data decision, deletion, and retention policies?
Senator, we operate as one company, so it would be for both Instagram and Facebook. So there wouldn't be a specific retention policy for Instagram. I don't know the last time the policies were specifically updated, but I can tell you that we're constantly working on privacy, making sure that we can do more to empower people to protect their own data, and making sure that we're compliant with the increasing number of privacy regulations around the world.
Would you support federal policy legislation that enforces data retention limits and data deletion requirements?
Senator, not only would we support that, we believe it's important for there to be privacy regulation here in the U.S., and that's something that we've been very public about for years now.
When users request to download their data from Instagram, are users given all information that the company holds on them, including assumptions that the company has about them based on their behavior?
Senator, when you download your data, we give you everything that is associated with you, as far as I know, but I want to make sure I double check that. There are certain instances where, actually I can't think of any exceptions, but I'll get back to you.
So the other way that I would add that question that maybe it requires follow-up is there any information that Instagram does not share with users when they request their data?
Senator, we do our best to share all the data, or all your data.
And you've been listening to Instagram CEO Adam Moseri testify before the Senate Commerce Committee, answering lawmakers' questions about Instagram's impact on young users. You can continue to watch this hearing on our website, cbsnews.com/hearing. But we're going to take you now to Kansas City, Missouri, where President Biden is touting the infrastructure law and its benefits. Let's listen.
After the president spoke, and I spoke after, then President Obama, he was back to my right. And I went back and I made sure I was talking on his left ear because it was all he was down the hallway. And I whispered what I said. How in God's name anybody heard it, I have no idea. And I shouldn't waste your time and tell you this, but we were going to go from there over to the Department of Transportation. No, excuse me, Department of Education. And I walked out the back and got in a presidential limo on the driver's side, the back seat. The president, he was already in there, and he was laughing like the devil. He was almost hysterical. I said, "What's so damn funny?" And he told me. And I said, "You're just lucky my mother's not alive. I'd be one dead man." Look, before I began, I'd like to say a word about a friend of mine who we lost this weekend. Man, a few hours west of Russell, Kansas, came from an hour not far from here, Russell, Kansas. A lot of Americans today remember Bob Dole as a presidential candidate, but for families he represented across the border, he represented Kansas for 36 years. And for those like me who had the